Good evening and welcome to Burnsville Park and National Resource Commission meeting for November 19, 2018. First item for our business is to approve our agenda for the evening. Commissioners, any item to add to the agenda? Hearing none. Staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay. Would like to have a motion to approve the agenda for November 19, 2018.
Motion approved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion moves. Thank you. Second item is for citizens' comments. Seeing none. We'll move to our third item, approval for minutes for August 20th, 2018 meeting. Commissioner, any revision for the minutes? No? Hearing none. Staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay. Like to have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And moves. Thank you. Our fourth item is for an application for Ali and Deborah Ward for our preliminary plot variance, and go with that. Presenting Regina. Hi.
Good evening, Chair,
evening.
members of the commission. I'm usually in front of the Planning Commissioner, City Council, so it's a pleasure to be in front of you tonight. I think I've met some of you at our comprehensive plan process and through some other meetings as well, but good to see you
Good to see you.
tonight.
Thank you.
This specific application is before you because the property is located on a lake shore, and variances that are lakeshore property or within the shoreline district come before the Parks and Rec Commission for additional review and comment before it heads to the City Council. This was before the Planning Commission on October 22nd. So to allow that time to go before council, it's before you tonight. Specific request is on Crystal Lake. The property at 1500 Joseph Street is located just east of Crystal Lake. It's surrounded by single-family property. It's an existing lot that was, there was a home constructed or cabin in 1945. In 1987, the property owner went through a process to obtain a portion of city right-of-way. Joseph Street used to connect to the edge of Crystal Lake for access. They went through a process in the late 80s, however, never joined the two pieces together officially through Dakota County and recording of that property. So part of that request is not only a variance, but to finalize that joining of the property. So that's why you see that preliminary and final plat portion in front of you as well. So zoning, again, single family, zoned R1 surrounding, you have park quite a ways away. The preliminary plat, as I discussed, is part of the request, which joins the property together. That's kind of a key piece of information. Shoreline properties have a minimum 20,000 square foot lot size. Our R1 zoning district has a minimum 10,000 square foot lot size. And this particular lot is, with joining the property, is just over, or it's just under 7,000 square feet. It's like 6,800 square feet. So by joining the lot officially, that brings it in greater compliance to what that minimum lot size requirement is. I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. So the property owner, and they are in the audience in case there's questions as we move further along. They are proposing to construct a new house, primarily in a similar location to the existing cabin, which is on site right now. I did highlight, so the proposed footprint of the house is generally where my arrow is located. They're proposing to demo the existing house, which extends to the red portion of the line extending. And then there's also some existing structures, a slab and a shed that are closer to the lake shore than the proposed home. So the property owner is being sensitive to the shoreline setback, and to the requirement of the shoreline for the ordinary high water level. There's a 75-foot setback from the DNR ordinary high water level elevation of 934.5. 75 feet back from that point, no structures are allowed unless it's a water-oriented structure. So they're proposing as part of their variance request to be approximately 37.5 feet away from that ordinary high water level. As pointed out before, the existing home is much closer to that setback requirement, so they're not encroaching any closer into that. There are multiple variances that are requested in relationship to the side yards, the front yards. It is I would say, an odd-shaped lot in a different location than your typical lot that's maybe very rectangular and abutting other rectangular lots. Access is kind of tricky, and there are multiple variances that are requested. But overall, again, they're being sensitive to what's there. As part of the variance request, the property owner is required to do shoreline restoration and include a shoreline buffer. I've highlighted in general where the natural planting area is proposed. The applicant did provide a list of native landscaping that's proposed within this area as well. And then this just gives you an overall kind of bird's eye view of what is proposed. Again, the natural planting area, and then the proposed house location to give you a view from the lake as well as looking from the east-west. And just more schematics that are proposed. As stated before, there are a number of variances that are requested. The setback to the lake from that ordinary high water level, there is a front yard setback that's requested for the house and for the garage. I should point out the house currently does not have a garage, so the prior owners would park on the street. So this allows, the two-car garage allows for the owner to park vehicles inside, which is a benefit. There's also a proposed variance along the north property line from 10 feet is required to 9.6 feet. The existing house is 2.9 feet away from that property line, so that's better. The lot size, which I mentioned before, bringing it greater conformance. There's also a variance to allow a 40-foot lot width. City code requires an 80-foot lot width, but these are, again, existing conditions. There is a variance request to allow a flat roof. Staff is in support of that. It does allow for the opportunity for the applicant to provide a green roof or solar roof. There is also a variance that was initially requested in relationship to the driveway setback. At Planning Commission, staff mentioned that we did not support that request, and the applicant stated that they're comfortable with changing that driveway setback to meet current city code. So that's no longer part of the request. And then there's also a right-of-way setback variance, 10 feet to the closest point. But again, because of the existing unusual configurations and lot setup, staff supports that request. There is a large chart, this was in your packet as well, that goes over all the different variances that are requested, if they're existing conditions or not. And we can certainly go into that more detail if you'd like. I do want to point out that the meets the impervious surface requirement. You're allowed to go up to 30% of the site can be impervious surface if you're doing mitigation. So it's 25% if you do mitigation such as rainwater gardens, shoreline buffers, things like that. You can go up to 30% and they meet that requirement. There are variance guidelines that we provide a checklist that was included in the packet under the Planning Commission section. positive and negative factors. Usually if there's more negative factors, that's an indication that, oh, we should take a look at this further. Maybe we should look at alternatives, a compromise, maybe denying the variance. But certainly the positive factors outweigh the negative in this particular request. Staff does recommend that the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Commission, I probably flipped that around, sorry. Recommend to the City Council approval of the preliminary plat, final plat, and variances subject to the conditions below. That the applicant shall restore the site to sod or seed, meeting city code. The driveway shall be revised prior to building permit application to meet city code. There's a requirement to plant a certain number of trees for new development or as part of a new building permit. We're asking that that accommodation be made. And then there was a series of just general comments from our engineering department that those comments be revised prior to building permit issuance. With that, I'll certainly stand for any questions. And again, the applicant, property owner is in the audience if there are specific questions for them as well.
Okay. Commissioners?
I have a question.
Please.
Just looking at the variances, it looks like the main one that maybe would affect the quality of the water is the impervious surface. And it looks like you've nicely got the buffers and the trees in there. Just a curious question is, how does the city verify that these are implemented? And if they are not implemented, what is the city's policy to get them implemented?
So with any submittal of additional landscaping or erosion control for any project, we do capture a security, landscaping security, or in this case, it would be reflective of the work proposed. And we hold on to that security until the work's in place and established. If it's not established and in place, we essentially have the right to do it ourselves, to hire someone and implement the landscaping. Most of the time, it's not an issue. Most of the time, people build to the approved plan. Of course, that security is in place in case it doesn't happen. We have had an instance in the past where an applicant didn't build to their approved plan and then they came back through the process. But most applicants, developers will come in and build per plan. But we have that security in place.
Okay, thank you.
Since Sarah's not here, do we know what kind of trees they're going to plant?
I'm not sure at this point. The applicant certainly is in the audience if there are specific questions. We do have a list within our city code of acceptable trees, trees that are, they would have to basically choose from one of those trees listed, because there are trees that we're, concerned about that are either not appropriate for Minnesota or that we have an abundance of. And we, want to stay away from having additional issues like the emerald ash borer and things like that.
That's good. Any other questions? Hearing none? Just from my comments, I appreciated looking at the footprint and preserving trees, so thank you for keeping existing trees. It's nice. That said, I think we are requiring for a motion. JJ?
That's
That's
correct, Commissioners. You are making a recommendation to council to approve or to continue some
Continue.
review of their request.
Okay, so I would like to have a motion to approve the petition.
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion moves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item for in our agenda is Park and Recreation Master Plan update. And JJ will be presenting it.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity it is an opportunity for me to come here and highlight for you the park projects and park programs that we have been implementing since the approval or adoption of the Parks Master Plan back in October of 2017. So that's what we're here for tonight. And you may recall that in that Parks Master Plan, the last section of the plan was what was called the Frameworks Plan. And in that Frameworks Plan, there were 10 focus areas that were laid out for us. And each of those areas had recommendations and strategies to accomplish some of the things in that focus area. That area was driven by public input, by you, by the committees and the groups that we met with, by the surveys that were out to the public. So it is really, truly the work that the community wants to see being done. That list, that Frameworks Plan is going to provide staff with ample workload for the next 10 to 15 years, we think. And I'd like to point out here that, like I said, currently we have over 35 projects that are in various stages of completion or starting or whatnot. And that's quite a bit. And some of them are very small, but some of them were large undertakings. So, and then Commissioners, you may recall that last year in December, you added this item to your annual work plan. So each and every year, we'll come before you and present to you the accomplishments or the programs and projects that we're working on as they are related to the Parks Master Plan. So like I said, there are 10 areas. The first area is the high-quality natural areas. The residents have asked us to continue to maintain those high-quality areas. Caleb is really responsible for this area. He's given me 6 great bullet points here, and I think you've had the opportunity to get out into some of the parks and see these firsthand. For example, the second effort at Terrace Oaks West Park, where we're working on 26 acres of restoration there. Various expanded buckthorn control efforts at Early Lake and at Crystal Lake West. One of the things that Caleb and his group have done is they've implemented an Adopt a Woodlot program. We've continued the management of, here's the Adopt a Woodlot program. I forgot I had that slide in there. So this is kind of an expansion of a previous program, but it kind of brings it all together. It's the merging of our current buckthorn removal program and adds a little bit more to it. And this really is a volunteer-based effort. It's citizens wanting to get out into their parks and do something good for the park. Another one is the additional buckthorn removal projects that we've had, in addition to controlled burns and other attempts at managing buckthorn in the parks. I had to show you the pictures of the goats. They were a huge hit over at Civic Center Park. And so, again, the various efforts in different parks to try to combat buckthorn and its growth in our parks. Some of you, I believe, I'm sorry, Commissioner Donaldson?
I'm just curious, so when the goats go in and remove the buckthorn, do we go in afterwards and do something with the stumps?
Yes,
Okay.
Commissioner Donaldson. So the project starts with workers going in to remove larger buckthorn. Yep, I don't know the exact diameter that they were cutting down and removing. And then followed up with the goats coming in to eat away all of the smaller buckthorn and undergrowth. And that'll be followed up by, in the spring, another process for making sure that is cleared and removed.
Okay.
Some of you, I believe, maybe participated in the pollinator event. Again, Commissioner Donaldson, you're shaking your head. I believe you were part of that on a nice rainy day. This is a stretch of Tennessee Park from River Hills Drive down to the river, a 3-acre stretch of land that had some work done this year, and so they followed that up with this pollinator project. And then, of course, I believe you're all aware that Crystal Lake came off the impaired waters list earlier this spring. So again, this is all great work in the area of high-quality natural areas that Caleb and his crew have been working on. Trails, trail centers, and connections. This is, again, another project that or projects that we've been working on over the past number of years to better connect our community parks to one another, better connect our park system to places of interest in Burnsville, to be kind of a more multimodal city so that folks can get out, ride their bike from one place to another, or get out and walk to the transit station and be safe crossing any roads and whatnot they might come across. One of the biggest projects we've been working on is the Lake Marion Greenway project. And there's two sections that we're working on currently. There's a south project that connects Sunset Pond to Kelleher Park. That's we're looking at that for 2019, 2020. And there's a section that is complete. And this is the north area. This is the Rose Bluff Trail from Williams Drive down to Kramer Nature Preserve. The photo on the right is relatively recent. As you can see, the fresh snow in that one. But as I was out there were people out there enjoying that trail already, and it's a very interesting trail because you may recall dedicated towards pedestrians or towards biking. So, basic park services. A lot of the work that's been done here has been to make ADA improvements in our parks. Commissioner Donaldson, you mentioned Neal Park, and there are others. Over at Alum Magnet, there was a handicap accessible picnic bench, but you couldn't get to it. And so this summer when we were out making improvements to that park, we made sure you could get to that. The access over at Neal Park to, again, the play structure, the access at Red Oak over to the pickleball courts and or over to the portable toilet at Red Oak Park. And then Bicentennial Garden, just up the street here, they finally finished, I believe it was phase 3 of that project. And a lot of that work was done to be ADA compliant so that folks can get to see some of the flower beds and get to and around the park without having to navigate stairs and things like that in the park. During our parks tour, we were out at Nicollet Commons Park. We took a look at all of the defective pavers that are crumbling and becoming trip hazards and creating dangerous situations, as well as the cracking that's happening on Nicollet Commons Park or the Ames Center Plaza. So we've looked at those things as well, and we're doing what we can to replace those. We've also added seating benches over at Terrace Oaks. This was maybe part of the nature play area addition. It was easy to, at that point in time, make the necessary improvements to that park. Drinking fountains have been added across the street at our skate park, and again over at Red Oak to accommodate those kids that are skating at the park across the street, and to accommodate the now pickleball players that are over at Red Oak Park. And then here's a picture of one of the ADA compliant projects that was completed this past, well, it was a year ago now. You can see there are wider gates so that somebody in a wheelchair can get into the gate, get turned around, and then close the gate behind them so the dog doesn't escape. On the right-hand side, that's the entrance to the main park. On the left-hand side, that's the entrance to the small dog park area. So there is access to both parks that is better accessible for somebody that has that type of need. And then I know this is one of the things that we heard about from our sustainability committee, but again, I wanted to highlight it here because this is, again, something that I think this commission had a hand in pushing this forward a little bit. But there are recycling containers now in 22 of our parks, our community parks, that's picked up on a regular basis, and we think that the first information we have on how well the program went this year, it was pretty good. They were very happy with the fact that the recycling materials that they were getting were pretty well kept uncontaminated. So they were very happy with the results of that, and we heard Sue Bass tell us that back in August. But again, more than 130 recycling containers out in 22 of our parks, and we think that's going to capture, I think, somewhere between 85 and 90% of the recycling that goes on in our parks. So, athletic fields and open spaces. Commissioners, this is a topic that was brought up, I think, primarily by some of our youth sports organizations and some of our different communities that don't participate in traditional sports like baseball. And while we have wonderful baseball and softball fields throughout our city. There's also a need to accommodate some other sports that are emerging, like lacrosse, like ultimate frisbee, like rugby, some of those types of sports that are starting to make an appearance. And so we have been in talks already with the folks over at Community Education and School District 191 to start to take a look at how many ball fields do we have in our park system and do they have in their system, and what's the right number to have? And should we be trying to implement additional soccer fields or fields for cricket or whatever the other sports might be that are coming our way? I will tell you that those conversations are just starting, and so there's a big piece that is left to be had, and that is conversations with our youth sports organizations and with the community as a whole to make sure we are trying to implement the field spaces that they want to see in our parks. Some of the other park athletic field improvements that we're making to our sand volleyball courts. For those of you that live in the south end of Burnsville, they are working on the sand volleyball court that sits right out on Loch Levon Drive, and I think that the ground froze up on them too quick before they could finish the project. So I'm not sure if they get back to that this fall, this winter or not, but they're making improvements to that container and the container around the sand volleyball court at Cliff Fen Park as well. Playing Aquatics, we were asked to make sure we are meeting the needs of our ever-changing demographics and to make sure we are keeping up with new trends in parks and recreation. And so we've been doing that, we think, to the best of our ability. First things first, back in the fall, winter of 2017, we made improvements to the splash pad. We added or implemented some new apparatus over there. You may recall the Crystal Lake boat beaching area that we discussed. And commissioners, I think I gave you the update in August. We had 2 people respond to our survey that was down at Crystal Lake Beach. So the concern about whether or not it's working, I think people were just okay with it. And there was no right or wrong or good or bad. It was just, hey, this is nice to have, thanks. There wasn't a complaint to be had there. We've been down to the new archery range. Some of you actually got off the bus on that rainy night. It is now called Archer Park, and it is officially scheduled to open, I believe, on Thanksgiving Day. So it is getting there. There's a picture of Archer Park. This is when you're standing underneath the shelter, shooting downrange at the targets out in front of you. So this was taken obviously just before the snow flew, so just not that long ago. And again, you can see there are accommodations to meet ADA requirements with pavement leading up to and into the shooting tunnels and things like that. Gaga Ball, for those of you that are not familiar, this is a Gaga Ball pit. This one was over at Red Oak Park this summer. It was very heavily used by the kids that participated in Camp Explore. It's kind of like dodgeball, okay, but you're in the pit and the balls stay below your knees, and you bat the ball at anybody else that's in the pit. And I believe if you get hit 3 times, then you're out. So, Gaga Ball. This picture might look familiar. This was the opening of our nature play area. Again, I believe Commissioner Newman, this is your daughter.
It is.
This might have been what I think was the best day of her life. She had a blast out there that day. She was covered head to toe in mud, which was awesome. And again, that's nature players is again another thing that's trending, and we are looking at how we can implement additional nature play areas in our park system throughout the city of Burnsville.
Hey, JJ, have you have any numbers or anything else that people are using it?
Chairman Maroof, at this point we do not. Again, okay. It's another great park amenity that we don't have a camera in that park. Sure. We don't have staff that are out there often enough to take head counts and things like that. And quite honestly, now the kids are back in school,
right?
And we don't know how often it's being used.
I'll say that we go
Commissioner
down
Moore.
there often because my daughter refers to this as the new park. So she continues that sentiment that she likes it. But
Good.
I've noticed that it's actually older kids that like it. So you see a lot of like 10 to 12-year-olds down there messing around a little bit, which is great, right? I'd rather have them doing that than something else. So every time we're down there, there's somebody there, and we're down there frequently. So, and everything's always moved around from the last time.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
the-
obviously somebody playing with
Yep.
it.
Wonderful.
I'm
to hear.
glad.
Wonderful to hear. Sport courts and fitness, commissioners, this area, the focus was on pickleball, and again, at our tour, we were out at Red Oak Park to take a look at the latest and greatest pickleball courts, and I believe that night, even in the mist, there were a group of 4 people out there playing, and they all yelled thank you to you folks as we were getting back on the bus. I do know that it was very heavily used from the time it was completed until right now. People were very happy with it, very excited. We are planning on probably a late May, early June, kind of a grand opening. Some other folks have already, in the community, have already reached out to Amber Jacobson to try to plan pickleball tournaments here. So we're looking at probably hosting a couple pickleball tournaments there next summer, and should be a lot of fun.
JJ, so do we take the nets and everything down this time of year?
Correct, Commissioner Donaldson. Nets on the tennis courts and at the pickleball courts, those will come down just to prevent any additional stress on the material and whatnot. And they last a little bit longer doing it that way.
Have we heard any feedback from the neighbors about the sound kind of mitigation? Do they know
Commissioner
comments?
Newman, at this point, I have not been told anything.
good.
If any other city staff members have heard any feedback, that has not been shared with me at this point, so. Our next area is community facilities. In general, the community likes our facilities. We're talking about the ice center that's across the street and the Burnhamwood Golf Course, and some folks even lumped in the Ames Center to this. They like the fact that we do a lot of work to make them look as nice and as clean and as neat as they can be. And so we continue to maintain that high level of standards. I'm going to refer to just talk about the first bullet point here quickly. In addition to those facilities, as you know, we have a number of other smaller park buildings in our system. One of the times that those get used is during the winter, during our warming house season. And one of the things that we've been tasked with the last 2 years now is to make sure that as the number of people using those outdoor skating rinks starts to decline, we want to make sure that we're not staying in the same rut of, well, we have to be open every day from 4 till 9 because that's what we've always done. So we're continuing to evaluate what are the right hours to stay open and maintain those facilities and those rinks in our parks. So that's an ongoing process, and we'll be taking a look at that again throughout this winter season as well. Over at the Ice Center, they've just wrapped up before it got too cold, the painting and staining of the exterior. All the wood on the outside of the building was just stained, and I think it had been almost 10 years since it had seen a treatment like that. So right now it looks really deep and really rich. And then these items here, these are the buttresses around the building. Those have been faded and worn and chipped and rusty and things like that. And so they went in and painted those end of the summer as well. So again, keeping it looking like it's new, even though it's a building that's seen some years. Programming and demographics. We've done a lot of work this summer to, again, change what we're doing, not stay with the same old, same old. Some of the items that we've been working on or worked on this summer was a Camp Explore program. This was basically an all-day Kids of Summer type program over at Red Oak, and that's why we had the Gaga Ball pit over there. So kids had the opportunity to spend a full 6.5 hours at the park with our staff, playing games, doing some educational pieces, doing some crafts and things like that. It was very well received. Each week was a different theme, so participants had the opportunity to sign up for the program on a week-by-week basis. They didn't have to sign up for the whole summer, so families got to pick and choose what it is they wanted to do. The Friday night boogie, we brought in some dance instructors on a Friday night just before a movie night. We had a DJ out at Nicollet Commons Park, and I think they taught salsa dancing that night to anybody and everybody that wanted to come out and experience it. And then they showed the movie La La Land. Couldn't remember. I was just stuck on Gaga. They showed the movie La La Land that night. So it was a good night. That event was free. We also had some vendors in the park for food and beverages. So trying to wrap it all into a full experience for those people coming out. We also added some end of summer programs this year, a Nature Nuts program and a fishing program. You can see here they're out at Crystal Lake enjoying an August day. And as I was looking through these pictures, the size of the sunfish these kids were catching was amazing, but they all had smiles on their faces that they caught a fish. So, and I think everybody caught a fish that day too, which was great. Revenue generation, again, in our Parks Master Plan, we were asked to make sure we're evaluating our programs, to make sure we're maximizing revenues whenever possible. And they also set up for us some cost recovery percentages based on whether or not a program is a value-added program or it's a more essential program. And so for a value-added program, let's call it an adult softball league, we better be recouping 100+% of our costs for that. For a Kids of Summer program or for the movie in the park, we want the community to come out and enjoy the park, enjoy the experience. We don't sell a ticket at the gate. We want people to be there. So for that one, there's a very low cost recovery. So we've been trying to, again, evaluate our programs, adjust fees whenever it's appropriate. And one of the things that we're looking at here for additional revenue options is bringing in food trucks, not only a food truck festival for next year, but also bringing in food truck options during events that we already have going on. Things like the movie night or things like a lunchtime concert, bringing in food trucks and working with them to generate more revenue for the Park and Rec system. Commissioner Donaldson.
So when the various sports teams have tournaments, the Burnsville tournament for whatever sports team is going on, do we recommend food trucks going to those kinds of things?
Commissioner Donaldson, very good question. More often than not, it's a youth program that's hosting it. So the BAC baseball, traveling baseball teams are out there that weekend. They want to see the revenue for them. So a number of parents volunteer to man the grill or sell the concessions, and that's how they help generate revenue for their programs. Now, there are programs, there are tournaments out there that have said, you know what, we don't have the volunteers anymore, that's too much work. If we work with a food truck person who can sell hamburgers and hot dogs and things like that, and we get a percentage of that sale, that seems a heck of a lot easier than trying to organize 150 volunteers to work 50 hours over the weekend. So it varies, to answer your question, it varies. Communications, there were a few things that we've done the past year to work with our communications department and to work with you folks and to work with the community as a whole. One of the first things that was accomplished, I think it was even accomplished before we final approval of the Parks Master Plan, is the Parks Pocket Map, and that was, again, one of the things that you folks came up with before or as part of the process, I think. I've already told you we updated that trail map booklet. One of the things we're doing internally is we're working on a monthly marketing plan to highlight a different park each month or to highlight a different program. We try to make it so that it's relevant with things that are happening that month. So right now we're highlighting Archer Park since it's opening in a couple days. In December, we're going to highlight Terrace Oaks because we want to talk about the ski trail opportunities that are there. So we continue to work down that line, and hopefully we get to all of our community parks or all of our parks or all of our programs to really give them a spotlight on what you can do or where you can do it. Our city's website is they're working on an update to our city's website, And with that will be an improved interactive map for if you want to search the park system based on picnic shelters or based on dog parks or bocce ball pits or whatever it might be, you'll be able to search based on that. So there are some improvements happening there. We are evaluating and working on the improvements to our signage in the park system. You've probably seen the picture on the right at a number of parks already. Those are the new signs, the new look signs that we have going up. And then the picture on the left, right now as you enter any of the parks, most often in the parking lot, there's a sign right on top, a big sign that says park closed, and then it tells you when the park is closed. We're trying to be a little more friendly than that and tell you when you can use the park, not when you can't use the park. But still our rules apply, but it just brings the sign kind of up to date, gives it a fresher look and more appropriate. And then one of the other things that we're working on, again, based on stealing, Commissioners, your idea for the mini pocket map and the trail map is a community parks guide. We're calling it Discover Your Community Parks. So these are all just drafts so far. You can see like Terrace Oaks, for example, it still shows you that there are many trails, but there's also a playground and a shelter available. And then we're working on some of the things that you can do while you are in that park, and we're working on a few different ways as to how we present that information. So this is still a work in progress, and hopefully we'll have that out soon.
What's ski juring?
That's when a skier is being pulled by their dogs.
Okay.
They are usually a dog or two. There are certain commands that ski jurors give to their dogs that they learn and teach to go right, to turn left, and to stop. So,
Okay.
Commissioners, with that, those are the 10 areas that we've been working on, the 10 focus areas. Those are highlights of some of the 35-plus projects that we've been working on and trying to improve our park system and our recreation programming. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Commissioner Donaldson.
So when we were out at Nicollet Commons Park, they talked about the water feature having problems. Have they figured out what's going on there? Or is not the right season to do that?
Commissioner Donaldson, right now is the river, the lake has been drained. But to my knowledge, they have not identified where the challenges are coming from and what the repair would be. But I know that they did have to remove the water in order to try to find the problem too, so.
Okay.
Maybe I don't have a question, but congratulations. This is quite an impressive list, so great job.
Thank you, Commissioner Newman. I'll be sure to pass that on to all the park staff that have been working on all of these projects.
Okay. Questions? Thank you, JJ. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Commissioners.
Going to move to our 6th item, miscellaneous. Staff, anything to report in miscellaneous?
Commissioners, we have a short turnaround here. Our next Park Commission meeting is on December 3rd. We'll meet in the chambers here at 6:30. And then following our regular meeting, we'll probably meet across the hall in one of the smaller meeting spaces to discuss our work plan for 2019 and to take a look at council ends and outcomes to make sure we're still working towards their end goals as well.
Sounds good.
So December 3rd is our next scheduled meeting.
Thank you.
Additionally, I would like to invite you all to attend the winter lighting ceremony on Wednesday night. It is being held at Nicollet Commons Park at 6 o'clock. Again, it's a wonderful event. It's a short turnaround. It's a quick 45 minutes, but they pack a lot into that 45 minutes, and it's a lot of fun to bring the kids out there. So please think about attending that.
So the 21st.
Yes, correct, the 21st.
Okay. That's good. Anything else, JJ?
That is it.
Okay. Commissioners, do you want to add anything? Miscellaneous? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move to adjourn the work session. Or second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And moves. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for watching Burnsville Park and National Resource Commission meeting. Thank you.